The Michigan basketball season is over. I'm sure you, just like I, were living and dying in every single shot, every defensive possession, and we came down to the wire. Michigan with 4 shot attempts in the final 11 seconds with a chance to win it. Couldn't get it done. We're going to go through our 5 takeaways, what happened, why it happened, and take a quick look at the future of what Juwan Howard has returning and what to keep an eye out for in his 3rd season coming up next year for Michigan basketball as their head coach. But make sure you guys subscribe to the channel. It is youtube.com/MichiganTV. Thanks so much for everyone who subscribed. We hit 13,000 subscribers yesterday, and we're going to keep growing and growing from there. Maybe get 20,000 or so by the time the football season rolls around. So make sure to hit that subscribe button. It is Michigan basketball news. We got 5 takeaways from last night's game coming up right now. Let's jump into my 5 takeaways. Number 1 takeaway from this game was the shooting down the stretch. No made baskets in the final 5:23 of the game, which is really tough to even to comprehend, including 4 missed shots, as I mentioned, in the last 11 seconds of the game. Wolverines also only had 2 made buckets in the final 8 minutes of the game. So we'll kind of go into some more stats here in a second. But I want to know from you guys, comment below, what's your one-word reaction to last night's game, the loss to UCLA, 51-49, the season ender for Michigan, and Juwan Howard's 2nd season, which looked like it could have a storybook ending, a Final Four run. Maybe they weren't going to win it all, but Final Four is certainly something that would have been a huge achievement for Juwan, specifically based on what this team had coming in and what some of the expectations were coming into the year, which was not even a top 25 team or program returning for year 2. So give me one word reaction. Mine is pain. I felt it on those missed shots down the stretch, and woke up feeling pain this morning as well. So go ahead and comment. Let me know what your one word reaction is on this devastating loss against UCLA. Number 2. My second takeaway is Michigan missed their last 8 shots of the game, which is just, it's not a way to win, right? You can't, I know a lot of people are upset. Some people even call this the worst loss in Michigan basketball history, which is obviously some, hyperbole. It clearly isn't the worst loss ever, but that's a tough way to go out. You're not going to win many games. You're not going to win many games in the Elite Eight, missing your last 8 shots of a game. But I'm going to question Juwan Howard's coaching a little bit, and that's something that most people aren't doing over his 2 years. His first season was whatever. They didn't get a chance to have a Big Ten tournament or a potential NCAA tournament run as a 8 or 9 or 10 seed potentially. But this year they were number 1 seed, and they lost in the Big Ten tournament. They lost in the NCAA tournament in really the same scenario. They had a chance to win it down to late in the game, and against Ohio State in the Big Ten tournament, it was 1 shot. It was kind of a step back, fadeaway-ish 3-pointer that was low percentage by Mike Smith, and this one, it was Franz Wagner coming off a screen with Hunter Dickinson, shooting a 3 with just under 11 seconds left where he was wide open. And then you get the ball back with 6 or so, 5.5, 6 seconds left. Mike Smith comes down and he takes a 3 when we're only down 2. And in the last play of the game, I know it was only half second left, but another Franz Wagner shot to potentially win the game for the Wolverines. And I just don't think that teams, they went to the bigs all game, and there's been some talk that maybe the shot with 11 seconds left was intended to go to Hunter Dickinson, but ultimately Franz Wagner took the shot and he airballed it, and that was potentially the difference in the game. So that bad strategy against Ohio State, at least in my opinion, poured over to tonight. Eli Brooks made some bad decisions with his shot selection in the second half, and most notably of all was he got the rebound on Franz Wagner's shot with under 10 seconds left when he caught it. And instead of coming down and maybe taking a set jump shot from 6-8 feet away or passing the ball or kicking it out, he tried to do a kind of a rebound alley-oop to himself and put the ball right back up while facing away from the hoop when he caught it. So I didn't think that was a good decision by him either. So ultimately, I think Juwan Howard needs to get better at these close game, late shot situations. They were going big all night, going to Hunter Dickinson, going to Brandon Johns, and some others late. And I think that would have given them the best opportunity to put 2 points on the board, go into overtime as the better, more talented team, and, have your chance at it versus taking a 3-pointer that Even the best players in the NBA, best players in college, you're shooting 35, 40% at best is the likelihood of that going in. So, Juwan, drop some better plays at the end of the game. If you were on Twitter last night, you saw me all over Twitter. I did my halftime show. I did my post-game show, which was me. I chugged some wine and then laid back and just, told you about my sorrows from that game. Watched the final shot from Franz while recording, and it is what it is. But I was voted #1 Twitter follower for Michigan fans in 2021 by my mom. Nevertheless, the vote counts, and that's what it is. So tweet at me, follow me at James Yoder. Let me know if you're an MFer, you watch the show Michigan Football Report MFR. My next takeaway is Franz Wagner is not the guy you should be giving the ball to take 2 shots in the last 11 seconds to win the game. Most times he was, but Juwan Howard's got to have a better feel for what Franz Wagner was doing in that game. He was cold all game. He's been cold shooting outside this entire tournament, and even though he had a really good game in the Sweet 16 against Florida State with double-digit points, rebounds, and 5 assists, he airballed a game-winning shot from three-pointer. Airballed it, didn't even touch net. All right, a 38.5% three-point shooter for the year. He was 2 for 15 from outside the arc in the NCAA tournament. 2 for 15. So you got to recognize he's ice cold. You know who wasn't ice cold? Is Sean D. Brown, right? And they didn't have him on the floor down the stretch. Although Franz Wagner is probably your best or second best player, I think Juwan Howard needed to identify how bad he was playing yesterday and really identify that he wasn't the guy to take those last shots at the end of the game. I think Shawnee Brown might have been a better player in that situation, had proven that he was hot, wasn't a prisoner of the moment by any means, which seemed to be what Franz Wagner was suffering from in some regards. And maybe Juwan put a different player in, maybe we have a different result. Wolverines could be heading to a Final Four. If you watched the video yesterday, you would have saw 3 keys to the game. Said go to Brandon Johns, you give him 10 points, you win the game. He got 8 points, so 2 points difference. So you got to hit your free throws, you got to force turnovers. They actually, at the end of the day, they didn't do any of those things. Brandon Johns ended up with 8 points. He was active early, but not really late. But you see my number 4 takeaway here, 6 of 11 from the free throw line, right? Mike Smith missed 2 right before halftime. Those points matter in these games. When you only score 49, Michigan scored under 50 for the only time all season. And those 5 free throws, that's the difference between winning and losing. You go 9 for 11, you go 10 for 11. You got a 1-point win, 2-point win, and scenarios clearly could have played differently. But those points, they matter, and they clearly mattered last night for Michigan. As I mentioned, only time they scored under 50 all season, 26 points below their season average was what they brought in last night. This team averaged just above 75 points on the year. So just a brutal offensive night. And frankly, the first half is probably the worst they played over a 20-minute stretch of this entire season. Last takeaway, I'll go on a positive. I'm glad to see that they tried something different in the second half and finally tried to take advantage of the height that Michigan had in the front court. Austin Davis got more playing time than he probably has all season. They were going to Hunter Dickinson all day. Brandon Johns was getting involved here or there, not as much as I wanted to, but Dickinson was the focal point of the offense in the second half. So glad to see that was something that they paid attention to. Glad to see that was something that Juwan Howard made a focus, and that was part of the offense. And there was some talk that here in the office that maybe that play that Franz Wagner airballed the 3 with 10.5 seconds left, potentially that was a play that was going to be a pick and roll to Dickinson, but both guys clapped on Dickinson, and Franz Wagner was so wide open, he just took the shot. But nevertheless, good to see them have a strategy, stick to it. It didn't ultimately work, but I think it was the right one for how to attack UCLA and their lack of height. One thing to mention, and this isn't one of my 5 takeaways, but they really let Johnny Juzang kill the Wolverines early on. He was unstoppable in the first half, ended up with 28 points and 11 of 19 shooting, and he clearly didn't go off in the second half, but that was his second highest scoring output of the season, and he was their most lethal scorer coming in. There was no debate about that. That wasn't a surprise to anybody. So I wish Michigan would have had a little bit better defensive strategy on him, potentially put Franz Wagner on him more, but they didn't as much as they should. Franz was on him a little bit in the second half, ended up with 28 points, 11 and 9, 19 shooting. So what's next for this team? Got a lot of guys who are going to make decisions. Hunter Dickinson, could he be a one-and-done player? Franz Wagner, he's a sophomore. Could he go to the NBA? Some have projected him as a first-round draft pick. Then you've got Mike Smith, Shawnee Brown, grad transfers. They are eligible for a 6th year next year. Could they return to Michigan? Also, Brandon Johns, Austin Davis. A lot of decisions. Potentially could have 6 or 7 guys leave the program or stay, with 6 recruits coming in, the #1 recruiting class for 2021. So this could be a super stacked team next year with all the players returning, or it could be a freshman-laden team if all the players I mentioned that have decisions to make end up either going pro. A couple of those guys could grad transfer elsewhere with the recruits coming in and decide that they could get playing time at a lesser talented team if a majority of Michigan's team comes back. So we'll see how that plays out. Next up, though, for this show, for me, it is on to Michigan football. Spring practice news and rumors will be coming all over, so make sure you follow us. Make sure that you tune into every video that we have, because we'll have more Michigan football news and rumors coming up on our next video. Until then, go Blue.